My son kicked me out to give my room to his wife. You don't deserve to be here, he told me. That sentence came before my name, before any explanation, before I had even set my coffee down. It landed clean and sharp, like something rehearsed. I remember noticing how calm his voice was, how carefully neutral, as if that would make it hurt less. His wife stood just behind him, not touching him, not looking at me either, me. Her eyes moved past us, already measuring the space, already rearranging a room that still smelled like my laundry soap. I did not ask what I had done wrong. I did not ask how long they had been talking about this. I knew the answer to both questions the moment he shifted his weight and looked at the floor instead of my face. The light coming through the window was thin and pale, the kind that makes everything feel exposed. He kept rubbing his hands together, a habit he had when he was nervous as a boy. Except this time, he did not sound nervous. He sounded decided. He explained that his wife needed more space, that the house felt crowded, that it would be better this way. Each sentence stacked neatly on top of the last, reasonable on the surface, hollow underneath. Not once did he use the word temporary. Not once did he ask where I would go. I looked at him and saw the child I had raised and the stranger standing in front of me at the same time. The distance between those two versions felt unbearable. I wanted to remind him that I had helped him buy this house, that I had sold my own place so he and his family could start here, that this room had been my landing spot after years of sleeping lightly and worrying quietly. None of that came out. The words stayed locked somewhere behind my ribs. Instead, I nodded. I went into the room and pulled out a suitcase. I folded my clothes carefully, not because I felt calm, but because I needed my hands to do something steady. From the hallway, I could hear his wife on the phone, already talking about paint and lighting, her voice bright with plans. I left without a scene. No shouting, no tears, just the sound of the zipper closing. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains Channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Maribel Sloan, 62. I stepped outside with one suitcase and the clear understanding that this was not just about a room. This was about power, trust, and something I had given away long before that morning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because the couch was uncomfortable, but because my mind kept replaying the same memory over and over, like it was asking me to finally look at it honestly. The condo had been mine. Small, nothing fancy, but paid off. When my son came to me years ago, newly married and anxious, he didn't ask for money outright. He talked about stability, about starting a family the right way, about not wanting to rent forever. You shouldn't be alone anymore, he told me back then. Come live with us. You'll always have a room. Always. That was the word he used. Back in 2016. I sold the condo 6 months later. The check was larger than anything I had ever held in my hands. $280,000. The condo fully paid. I handed over most of it without hesitation. The house went in his name. It made sense, he explained. Easier for taxes. Easier for the mortgage. Easier for the future. I remember hesitating for half a second. I asked, quietly, "And me?" He laughed. Quick and easy. "Mom, don't be dramatic. This is your home too." There was no contract, no clause, no legal protection, just his spoken assurance across the kitchen table. Just trust. Spoken across a kitchen table like it was binding. Sitting on my friend's couch now, I could see the full shape of it. He hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't tricked me. I had volunteered, believing love worked like a contract, even when nothing was written down. When I replayed the conversation from that morning, It clicked into place. The way he stood so firmly in the doorway, the way his voice didn't shake, the way he never once asked for permission. You helped us. He told me earlier that day, arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere past my shoulder. But this is our house now. We have to do what's best for our marriage, best for us, not best for family, not best for me. The anger I felt didn't explode outward. It folded in on itself, heavy and quiet. There was no villain to confront, no law to appeal to, just a truth I had avoided for years. I had mistaken trust for security, and when everything rested on trust alone, I was the only one left unprotected. I waited until the house went quiet, not the deep quiet of night, but that thin, early stillness when people are awake, yet pretending they aren't ready to deal with each other. I rolled my suitcase across the floor slowly, pausing whenever the wheels caught, listening for footsteps that never came. My son stayed in the kitchen. I could hear the faint clink of a mug against the counter. He didn't follow me. That hurt more than if he had. His wife passed the hallway once. Phone pressed to her ear. We'll repaint first. She murmured to whoever was listening. The light in there is perfect. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't look at me. I became part of the furniture she was already replacing. I stopped near the door and waited for something. A question. A change of heart. Even a clumsy apology that would land wrong but prove there was still a crack in this decision. Nothing came. I picked up the suitcase, one bag. That was all I allowed myself. I'd learned long ago that too much baggage makes leaving harder than it needs to be. As I opened the door, my son finally spoke, his voice careful, almost rehearsed. You can come back for the rest later. Later. Like this was temporary. Like he hadn't just closed something permanent between us. I'll manage, I answered. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. It didn't plead. It sounded finished. He nodded, relief passing through his face too quickly for him to hide it. Outside. The air felt sharper. I stood there for a moment. Suitcase at my feet, keys heavy in my hand. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. As I walked away, a strange certainty settled in my chest. This wasn't an ending. It was the moment everything they leaned on stopped holding them up. My friend Ellen opened the door in her socks, hair still damp from a rushed shower. One look at my suitcase and she stepped aside without asking for an explanation. You can take the couch, she murmured. I'll make coffee later. That kindness almost broke me. I nodded and set my bag down like it weighed more than it did. The night stretched on without sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, my hand twitched toward my phone. I typed my son's name once, then erased it. Typed it again. Erased it faster. I didn't trust what would come out if I let myself reach him. Apologies have a way of turning into permission. Around 3 a.m, I sat up and opened my bag. Not looking for clothes, but for something solid. Papers, folders, old envelopes I kept out of habit. My fingers moved automatically, sorting through things I hadn't thought about in years. The electric bill for the house, still in my name. The homeowner's insurance, renewed by my account, the internet service, the auto payments, even the emergency contact on the mortgage paperwork. I stared at the stack until my chest felt tight. I hadn't just lived there. I had kept the place running quietly, invisibly, the way I always had. None of it was dramatic. None of it felt powerful. It was just responsibility, piled up slowly over time. Ellen padded in from the hallway, wrapped in a sweater. You're up early? I never really went to sleep, I answered. She glanced at the papers, then back at me. Looks like you've been carrying more than a suitcase. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I thought leaving meant losing everything. Ellen shook her head, firm and calm. No, it just means you stopped pretending it was weightless. I gathered the papers back into the bag, and zipped it closed. For the first time since I left, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like space in the morning. I made a list, not out of anger, out of clarity. Ellen watched from the kitchen table as I spread papers across the surface, lining them up in careful rows. "You look like you're about to run a small country," she remarked, trying to lighten the air. "I'm just stepping out of the way," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I started with the utilities. I called the electric company first. The woman on the line verified my name, then asked if I wanted the service transferred or closed. "Closed," I answered. No hesitation. The insurance was next. Homeowners. Bundled and renewed every year through my account. I canceled the automatic payments and requested written confirmation. The internet service followed. Then the streaming subscriptions I'd added so everyone could watch whatever they liked without thinking about the bill. Each call ended the same way. Polite voices. Simple confirmations. No alarms. No accusations. Around noon, my phone buzzed. My son's name lit up the screen. "Why isn't the internet working?" he asked, skipping any greeting. "Madison's in the middle of something. It's not active anymore." I told him. There was a pause. Short but sharp. "You can't just turn things off. I can stop paying for them," I replied. "They were in my name. You're doing this on purpose." He pressed. Frustration creeping in. "I'm doing it correctly." I answered. "I didn't take anything that belonged to you." Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear him recalculating, trying to find the angle where I'd fold. "So you're just done?" he finally asked. I stepped aside. I told him, "That's all." The call ended without resolution. I didn't block him. I didn't raise my voice. I closed the folder, stacked the papers, and slid them back into my bag. For years, I'd held everything together quietly, believing that was love. Walking away from that role didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. 2 weeks passed before I heard from him again. Not a call. Not even my name on the screen. Just a message that read, "Internet still off. Can you turn it back on?" I stared at it longer than I needed to. There was no greeting, no check-in, no acknowledgement of the morning he watched me leave with one suitcase and no place to go. I typed. Erased. Typed again. Then I set the phone down without answering. By the end of the day, another message came through. The electric company left a notice. "We need the account number. Need an imperative. No please, no apology." Ellen glanced up from the table when my phone buzzed again. "They still asking for help access," I corrected. "They're asking for access." That night, he finally called. His voice sounded tighter than I remembered. Words tripping over each other now that things weren't running smoothly. "Things are kind of complicated here," he muttered. "Payments didn't go through. The insurance company sent a letter. Did you switch it to your name?" I asked. A pause. Then, "I thought you handled that." "I did," I replied. "When I lived there." He exhaled hard, irritation bleeding through. "You don't have to make this difficult." I didn't. I told him. I just stopped making it easy. Another silence. This one heavier. When he spoke again, his tone softened. Almost careful. "Can you just help us get through this part?" Not once did he ask where I was staying or if I was safe. Not once did he wonder if I was eating, or okay, or scared. He wanted the machine running again. Nothing more. "I can't," I answered. "Steady. You'll have to take over." The line went dead after that. I set the phone aside, the truth settling fully in my chest. When they reached out, it wasn't for me. It was for what I used to do. The messages didn't stop. They multiplied. First from my son, then from his wife. Different numbers, different tones. Same purpose. "We're under a lot of pressure. This is getting out of hand. You know how things work better than we do." By the third day, The wording shifted. We're family. Families help each other. You don't have to punish us like this. That one landed differently. Not because it hurt more, Basso, but because it tried to turn my restraint into cruelty. I answered once, choosing every word carefully. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm stepping back. His reply came fast. That feels the same to us. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I wanted to explain the difference. I wanted to remind him of school lunches packed, late-night drives, the way I used to sit awake until I heard his key in the door. Love doesn't disappear just because it's not rewarded. Instead, I typed, I love you. I'm just not doing this anymore. A minute passed, then another message. So you're choosing this over us. That was the moment I understood what they needed from me wasn't help. It was compliance. Silence on my terms felt like betrayal to people who were used to my constant presence. Ellen watched me from across the room as I set the phone down. You okay, I am, I answered. Surprised to find it was true. I just need to keep it this way. That night, I blocked the numbers. Not in anger, not dramatically. Just one by one, calmly. Like closing doors I'd been holding open for years. I still loved my son. That hadn't changed. What had changed was my willingness to be reachable at the cost of my own steadiness. Silence settled in again. Heavier this time, but stronger too. It didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like a line finally drawn where one had always been missing. The cracks became impossible to ignore after that. Ellen mentioned it first. Careful. Like she didn't want to sound like she was feeding me gossip. I ran into your neighbor from the old street. She told me one afternoon. She asked if everything was okay over there. I didn't answer right away. Apparently. The house was loud now, doors slamming, voices carrying through open windows. My son and his wife arguing about bills, about timing, about who forgot to call which company. The kind of arguments that don't stay private no matter how hard people try. A week later, my phone lit up from an unfamiliar number. I didn't pick up. But the voicemail came through anyway. His voice sounded different. Not angry, not demanding, thin. Mom, the insurance sent another letter, he murmured. They're talking about a lapse. I thought we had more time. I listened once, then deleted it. That night, Ellen found me standing by the sink, hands resting on the counter like I needed the support. You feel bad, she observed quietly. I feel relieved. I admitted. The word tasted wrong. And that makes me feel worse. Relief wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfaction. It was the absence of constant vigilance, the quiet knowledge that I wasn't waiting for the next problem to land on my shoulders. Guilt followed close behind, heavy and familiar. Another message arrived days later. This one sharper. The mortgage is late. We can't keep juggling this. Juggling. As if that had ever been shared. I typed a response and erased it. Then erased it again. There was nothing left to explain that hadn't already been clear. From the outside, their life looked the same house, same routines, but underneath, the balance was gone. They were discovering what happened when the person who managed the margins stepped away. I sat down at the table, breathing through the tightness in my chest. Knowing two things at once. I hadn't caused this, and I was no longer going to stop it. The pounding started before my alarm, not knocking. Pounding. The kind that rattles the doorframe and pulls you straight out of sleep with your heart already racing. I checked the clock. 5:30 in the morning. Mom! A voice called through the door, strained and hoarse. Please, we need to talk. I wrapped my robe tighter and stepped closer, careful not to open it. Through the peephole, I saw suitcases clustered on the mat, plastic bags stacked against the wall. My son stood hunched, eyes rimmed red. His wife hovered beside him, arms folded, jaw tight. They looked smaller like this, pressed into a hallway that didn't belong to them. You can't do this, he pleaded. Just open the door. I asked you to leave, I replied through the wood. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, but steady. We have nowhere else to go, his wife insisted, voice rising in desperation. Words spilling over each other. The bills piled up. The bank won't wait. We just need a little time. A neighbor's door down the hall cracked open, then shut again. The noise carried. The hour made everything sharper. I'm not letting anyone in, I told them. This isn't okay. My son pressed his palm flat against the door. We're family. You don't turn your back on family. I didn't. I answered. I stepped away. He shook his head. Frustration flashing. You always fix things. Just this once. Please. The begging overlapped then. Apologies tangled with excuses. Promises arrived late and unconvincing. They talked over each other, voices rising, desperation spilling into anger when I didn't move. My hands trembled. Not from doubt, but from the weight of the moment. I thought of the morning he stood in my doorway and told me I didn't deserve to be there. I thought of the suitcase, the silence that followed me out. I took out my phone and dialed. When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out calm. There are people outside my apartment door who won't leave. They're making a disturbance. I don't feel safe. Behind the door, the knocking turned frantic. Mom, don't. My son urged, please. I stayed where I was. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I listened as the sirens drew closer, faint at first, then unmistakable. When the officers arrived, they spoke quietly, professionally. No one was handcuffed. No one was arrested. My son avoided my eyes as they gathered their bags. His wife stared at the floor. As they walked away, the hallway fell silent again. I slid the lock into place and leaned my forehead against the door, breathing through the aftermath, knowing the test had passed because I hadn't opened it. The officers spoke in calm, even voices. No shouting, no spectacle, just firm instructions that left no space for argument. I stayed inside, back against the door, breathing slowly until my hands stopped shaking. A gentle knock followed. Ma'am, they've left. If they come back, call us. Thank you. I answered. My voice stayed steady. That felt important. When the hallway went quiet, the apartment felt settled in a way it hadn't before. Not lonely, complete. I made tea I barely touched and sat at the table, holding the mug for warmth. My phone lit up once a blocked number trying again. I turned it face down and let the silence hold. What surprised me was the lack of triumph. Watching them leave didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief, like choosing myself without needing permission. I learned something that night. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. Family isn't measured by how much pain you tolerate. Belonging only exists where respect is given freely. If this story spoke to you, like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes, strength is simply keeping the door closed and standing still.